Should we have a song before we have our story? What about? Because Monkey's joining us. 3 little monkeys. Can we remember the words? 3 little monkeys jumping on the bed. One fell off and bumped his head. Mummy phoned the doctor and the doctor said, no more monkeys jumping on the bed. 2 little monkeys jumping on the bed. One fell off and bumped her head. Mummy called the doctor and the doctor said, no more monkeys jumping on the bed. 1 little monkey jumping on the bed. He fell off and bumped his head. Mummy called the doctor and the doctor said, put those monkeys back to bed. Now, before we have today's story, I think I need to have a little look in this Storytime basket. It seems very full of things, not really to do with story time. What are these pair of shoes doing in the Storytime basket? They're very smart shoes and they're very shiny. Oh, I know who they might belong to. Did you guess what today's storybook was going to be? It is The Smartest Giant in Town. That's why those smart shoes were in the Storytime basket. And The Smartest Giant in Town was written by Julia Donaldson and the lovely illustrations are by Axel Scheffler. So it's a big thank you to Julia and Axel once again, and to Macmillan Books for allowing us to use it at story time. Now, yesterday's story was quite short, and today's story is quite long. So just so that you know, so make sure you're sitting nice and comfy, and we might not have time for as many songs, but it's worth it because it's such a good story. George was a giant, the scruffiest giant in town. He always wore the same pair of old brown sandals and the same old patched up gown. I wish I wasn't the scruffiest giant in town, he said sadly. But one day, George noticed a new shop. It was full of smart clothes, so he bought a smart shirt, a smart pair of trousers, a smart belt, a smart stripy tie, some smart socks with diamonds up the sides, and a pair of smart shiny shoes. Now I'm the smartest giant in town, he said proudly. George left his old clothes behind in the shop. He was about to go home when he heard a sound. On the pavement stood a giraffe who was sniffing sadly. What's the matter? Asked George. It's my neck, said the giraffe. It's so very long and so very cold. I wish I had a long warm scarf. Cheer up, said George, and he took off his stripy tie. It didn't match my socks anyway, he said, as he wound it round and round the giraffe's neck. It made a wonderful scarf. Thank you, said the giraffe. As George strode towards home, he sang to himself. My tie is a scarf for a cold giraffe, but look me up and down. I'm the smartest giant in town. George came to a river. On a boat stood a goat who was bleating loudly. "What's the matter?" said George. "It's my sail," said the goat. "It blew away in a storm. I wish I had a strong new sail for my boat." "Cheer up," said George, and he took off his new white shirt. "It kept coming untucked anyway," he said, as he tied it to the mast of the goat's boat. It made a magnificent sail. "Thank you," said the goat. George strode on, singing to himself. "My tie is a scarf for a cold giraffe. My shirt's on a boat has a sail for a goat. But look me up and down, I'm the smartest giant in town." George came to a tiny ruined house. Beside the house stood a white mouse with lots of baby mice. They were all squeaking. "What's the matter?" said George. "It's our house," squeaked Mother Mouse. "It burned down and now we have nowhere to live. I wish we had a nice new house." "Cheer up," said George, and he took off one of his shiny shoes. "It was giving me blisters anyway," he said, as the mouse and her babies scrambled inside. The shoe made a perfect home for them. "Thank you," they squeaked. George had to hop along the road now, but he didn't mind. As he hopped, he sang to himself. "My tie is a scarf for a cold giraffe. My shirt's on the boat has a sail for a goat. My shoe is a house for a little white mouse. But look me up and down, I'm the smartest giant in town." George came to a campsite. Beside a tent stood a fox who was crying. "What's the matter?" asked George. "It's my sleeping bag," said Fox. "I dropped it in a puddle. I wish I had a warm, dry sleeping bag." "Cheer up," said George, and he took off one of his socks with diamonds up the sides. "It was tickling my toes anyway," he said, as the fox snuggled into it. "It made a very fine sleeping bag." "Thank you," said the fox. George hopped on, singing to himself. "My tie is a scarf for a cold giraffe. My shirt's on the boat has a sail for a goat. My shoe is a house for a little white mouse. One of my socks is a bed for a fox. But look me up and down, I'm the smartest giant in town." George came to a big squelchy bog. Beside the bog was a dog who was howling. "What's the matter?" asked George. "It's this bog," said the dog. "I need to get across, but I keep getting stuck in the mud. I wish there was a safe, dry path." "Cheer up," said George, and he took off his smart new belt. "It was squashing my tummy anyway," he said, as he laid it down over the bog. It made an excellent path. "Thank you," said Dog. The wind started to blow, but But George didn't mind. He hopped on, singing to himself. My tie is a scarf for a cold giraffe. My shirt's on the boat as a sail for a goat. My shoe is a house for a little white mouse. One of my socks is a bed for a fox. My belt helped a dog who was crossing a bog, but my trousers are falling down. I'm the coldest giant in town. Suddenly, George felt sad and shivery and not at all smart. He stood on one foot and thought, I'll have to go back to the shop and buy some more clothes, he decided. He turned round and hopped all the way back to the shop. But when it got there, it was closed. Oh no, cried George. He sank down on the doorstep and a tear ran down his nose. He felt as sad as all the animals he had met on his way home. Then, out of the corner of his eye, he saw a bag with something familiar poking out of the top. What could it be? George took a closer look. My gown, he yelled. My dear old gown and sandals. George put them on. They felt wonderfully comfortable. I'm the cosiest giant in town, he cried. And he danced back home along the road. Outside his front door stood all the animals he had helped. They were carrying an enormous present. I wonder what it could be. Come on, George, they said. Open it. George untied the ribbon. Inside was a beautiful gold paper crown and card. Look inside the card, George, said the animals. George put the crown on his head and opened the card. Inside it said, your tie is a scarf for a cold giraffe. Your shirt's on a boat as a sail for a goat. Your shoe is a house for a little white mouse. One of your socks is a bed for a fox. Your belt helped a dog who was crossing a bog. So here is a very fine crown to go with the sandals and gown of the kindest giant in town. What a lovely ending to that fantastic story. Did you enjoy it? I know it was a long story, but it was a good one. I think it's time for our last song now. Are we ready for If You're Happy and You Know It? If you're happy and you know it, clap your hands. If you're happy and you know it, clap your hands. If you're happy and you know it and you really want to show it, if you're happy and you know it, clap your hands. If you're happy and you know it, stamp your feet. If you're happy and you know it, stamp your feet. If you're happy and you know it and you really want to show it, if you're happy and you know it, stamp your feet. If you're happy and you know it, shout hooray, hooray. If you're happy and you know it, shout hooray, hooray. If you're happy and you know it and you really want to show it, if you're happy and you know it, shout hooray, hooray. Oh, give ourselves a clap, everybody. Oh, I hope you've enjoyed today's story time. And I'll see you all next week. Bye.